When the doubt gets loud, but answer that call. Vision ain't real till you grind at speed, so breathing deep. Then call the damn leads. Call the damn leads.
Hey, welcome back to Call the Damn Leads, the show by sales professionals for sales professionals. I'm your host, Drewbie Wilson. With more than 2 decades in sales, I've seen it, been through it, heard about it. Now I'm bringing those stories to you, my favorite people in the world, the sales community. Because let's be honest, this is the greatest job on earth. It doesn't matter where you come from, what background, what personality type, you can create an amazing life in sales. Today's guest, no stranger to that journey. I'd like to welcome Walter Crosby to the show. How are you, sir?
I am doing great. Glad to be here. Appreciate this opportunity to share some stories.
Hey, well, let's jump right into it, man. Let's hear your craziest sales story.
Well, it happened about 38 years ago, right? I'm old.
Okay.
So I'll set the context for you. I am a young commercial real estate broker in New York City, in Manhattan. I am showing space, right, in a midtown building to a client prospect, I guess is the right word, who's let's just call him a little shady, right? He shows up with the slick back hair. Okay, this is in the late 80s. He shows back with this slick back hair and this long leather trench coat, right? Just it was a weird look. And I'm showing him I got on a nice gray suit, and the tenant broker is, and Brooks Brother, kind of conservative dude. And we're walking around the space, and the tenant broker says something that really pisses off the guy I brought to see the space. And we're looking at like 100,000 square feet, right? And it's a big deal for a 25-year-old punk. So they're arguing, literally, like, I think they're going to throw down in the middle of this space in a Class A office building in New York City. And I kind of step in between them, right, to break up the fight. Before it starts, the guy steps back. His name was Guido, by the way. He pulls a 45, Drewbie. He pulls a 45 out of his pocket and points it at the tenant broker. And, I'm 25 years old. I have familiarity with weapons. I could recognize it was a beautiful 1911. But I've never had that happen. And since that time, 38 years ago, and I tried to de-escalate it. I did everything I possibly could. He was ready to just take a shot at this guy. So he put the gun away. And I started walking him out of the space, right? Kind of trying to hold him and push him. And he took a swing at me. The other guy is running to grab a phone because this was before the cell phone, right, in our pocket deal. So he's running to an office to go make a phone call to call the authorities. And this guy took a swing at me because I was trying to get him out of the building. So before something really, really bad happened. So I don't know if that's a crazy story, if anybody else has experienced gunplay in a sales meeting. But if somebody shows up in a black leather trench coat with the greased up hair that you don't really know too well, you might want to frisk them or take some steps. It was the first and last time I had a 45 pulled on me on a sales call. I've had people call names. I've had people come get really upset. I've had people cry, but I've never had a gun pulled on me since.
I can say that I've had a gun pulled on me in a sales situation, but it was illegitimate sales when I was real young, and so there's a different aspect to that type of sales where gunplay is a little more common. Unfortunately, that's the nature of the beast. I will
Was this
say,
a commoditized product that you were involved in?
highly commoditized. It's funny you would say that, Walter. My mom and I, God bless her, she's a wonderful woman, has been there for me and supported me through all of my sales journeys. We would joke that I was in the commodities relocation business.
Okay.
I just happened to know a guy that had a lot of things, and if you needed it, I could get it, right? And that's just the game that we play in. That's arbitrage. That's sales 101. If I can get it for less than what I'm selling it to you for, I get to make a little something in the middle. And so would I be curious to know, Walter, over the years, what were some of the things that you realized in going into a sales conversation that you wanted to be aware of, whether that was like doing your research before the call or when you're in the middle of that conversation? What are some of the things that you're looking for to be able to qualify or disqualify someone as a worthwhile conversation?
Well, back then, the research was a little more challenging, right? There wasn't
Sure.
the websites to get to, but I think that's a challenge a lot of sales folks have today. They either do zero research or they overdo it and hide in the research piece of it, right? So we can create a prompt today that we put out there, put in the website, give us the basic things, and we can have 3 pages of great pieces of information that will help us do great discovery. That wasn't there when I started. So what we tried to do was read everything that we could read as we're walking into the space, walking into the building, looking at the office, right? So if the first thing I would do if I walked into the office, you can get a sense as to who they are with what's on their desk, right? And we don't do this anymore, right? Because everything is virtual. But when I walked into an office, if the guy had tons of pictures around on the wall, or he had awards, right? This guy had a bit of an ego, and he was out there, probably had some charisma. And if it was like, an engineer, there was everything was nice and orderly on his desk. There was, probably a little thing in his pocket, in his shirt pocket, to keep his pens and pencils organized, right? So that sets you up for how you're going to speak to them, right? You got to be able to read the body language. You got to be able to read the space, and matching people's their speed and their tone. So when I was in New York, everybody spoke a little faster. Like, what do you want? Like, why are you here? Right? You had to get right to it. There wasn't talking about the Yankees or the Jets or the Giants, right? It was right to it. And I left New York after 8 or 9 years, and I took some time to go to Atlanta. Wildly different. Oh, yeah. Wildly different. I had to shift back down to second gear. I had to slow my pace down. I had to change my tone, right? It all had to and it was me. I have to be whoever they need me to be. I had guys there, which they didn't like Yankees. They didn't like New Yorkers. And they certainly didn't like Jews. And I was all three. So sometimes it was a real problem. So I've had some confrontation now that I think about it in some of my sales calls. But if you can read the room and pick up on signals of what you're getting, the body language and their tone, I always was taught to match where they were, not take any crap from anybody, and just be really, really open and honest and telling them that things were, what was really going to happen. And not sugarcoat it, not hide things, be transparent.
Yeah, I really appreciate you sharing that in the terms of, I think a lot of what sales comes down to is understanding other people and doing it from as non-judgmental a place as possible, while still judging every part of what you're seeing and looking at so that you can determine what path you need to take in order to, as you said, be the person this individual needs so that they can make the decision they need to make to either solve the problem or situation that they're in, or to get the thing that they desire the most. Because that's ultimately why most people are buying, right? They're trying to get out of pain or into pleasure, and they need someone's assistance and permission to make a decision, because getting someone to make a decision is one of the hardest things on the planet to do, in my opinion. And so, Walter, I'd be curious for you, as you have learned and become this expert in the field over the years, what are some of the ways that you have found to help people making a decision for themselves versus like forcing them to make a decision for you?
Yeah, I don't think we can force somebody to make a decision. You get a lot of regret that way. I think it's easiest when it's their idea, when it's their decision. So what I mean by that is we need to get them to, if we say something as a salesperson, it's a salesperson saying it. So we have to become this, really not a linguist, but you're a bit of a therapist in terms of trying to understand people, right? To your point, being paying attention to what they're saying, what they're doing, if they're looking for something, if they're moving towards something, or if they're moving away from something, right? That fear, or we call it dreams, doubts, and drains. So you have to try to figure that piece out as you're going. So it's about asking questions, and from a very, very, very simple way of looking at it, it's asking questions to get that person to go in the direction you want them to go. And you don't want to be in front of them in the direction you want to go. So if it's a pendulum on a clock, right? That pendulum is just going back and forth, and that you want them to go towards the 9 on the clock. You can't be on that side of the pendulum, right? You got to be on the other side and allow them the freedom to go to where they need to go. So it's about the questions. So I think of it this way. We bring curiosity to the conversation. If you're really, truly curious about this person's situation, you don't have to struggle with the questions. Like, really? Why'd you do that? Why are you doing it that way? That's interesting, right? And you kind of you keep that curiosity going to understand and uncover things, which is just discovery. And then when they say something that is, I don't know, dumb or counterintuitive, have a little skepticism. It's okay to say to somebody, I don't understand. You told me X, and now you're telling me Y. I'm confused. What's really going on here, right? And call it out. I think you can say whatever you want to say, as long as you say it in a nurturing fashion with the right tone and approach to it. Because you can say, tell somebody to screw off, right? 500 different ways. And it can make them laugh. You can make them cry. You can make them angry, right? It's anything in between those emotions. So you want to get them to be emotional about whatever it is that you're trying to do, that pain, that issue they're having. And then really, really listen to what they're saying so you can be in the conversation. If you're not in the conversation with them, right? You're that sideline reporter after, at the football game when the coach is running off at halftime, right? And the sideline reporter is going to ask 2 or 3 questions. They're not listening. They're just waiting to ask their next question. And in sales, it's going to cause all kinds of trouble. So, bring that curiosity, a little skepticism, actively listening. And if you find a big enough problem, have a little empathy, right? I mean, if they're really struggling, you can't use it as a weapon. You gotta be empathetic to their problem. You still want to help them, right? But those 4 things just makes what you're doing more conversational. It flows easier, and they relax, and then you can get someplace more quickly.
Yeah, that's really. There's so many gems in that. So if you guys are listening, go back and listen to this again, because the whole key to what he just said was actively listening and paying attention to not just what people are saying, but how are they saying it. the way they're saying it and the layer and the style. And one of the things that I've always used, when I'm working with a newer sales professional and talking about the tonality, and I appreciate you sharing this, is that the phrase, get out of here. If I said it to you as, get out of here, you're going to recognize like, whoa, maybe I need to get out of here. But if I'm like, hey, get out of here, that's a different invitation, right? It's a different, it's the exact same phrase, and yet the context behind it is so much different. And that's why you have to be paying attention. And one of the things that I have found is making sales a little more difficult and also bringing out the best of the best is the transition from the face-to-face and on-the-phone sales. As much as I love telling people call the damn leads, we all know they're not always answering as often these days. And so you have to learn how to communicate via text and via the written word, whether it's content on social media or in your emails. And so, Walter, I'm curious for you, what are some of the things that you're doing for yourself and to help coach your clients on working through not having the tonality or the body language when we're having to communicate through these text, emails, and social media?
Well, getting on the phone and calling the damn leads is a big piece of it, right? I think the thing I would say there before I answer your question is, it's somewhere between 17 and 21 touches to really get somebody's attention and start to build it, right? And I had one of my mentors remind me yesterday, I was like, I'm trying to get a hold of the CEO about a proposal and he hasn't called me back. And he goes, well, how many times you call him? So well, I called him 3 times. So, well, do you have any data on how many times it? And I'm like, yeah, I do. Okay, great. I'll pick up the phone and call. Because
throw my book back in my face. Why don't you? Oh, sorry.
We do have to. We do have to take our own medicine sometimes, but I think that's also part of knowing your customer, your audience. You can make a phone call. You could leave a voicemail. You can send a text message. Right. That's 3 touches, right there. And they don't all have to be. They can't be long and lengthy, right? You have to mix things up. You have to be able to use some creativity. And I like to run the parallel, especially with newer salespeople. If you're trying to get a hold of a friend of yours and you're concerned about something with that friend, what are you going to do? There's going to be a little urgency behind what you're going to do. You're not going to be a complete pain in the ass and just keep dialing the phone. But you want to balance that creativity, the urgency, and getting their attention because, I have salespeople say all the time, I don't want to bother them. It's your job. You are bothering them. They're not expecting your call. They don't necessarily know, especially if it's cold, completely cold. They don't know, who you are, what you want. Right. So you've got to be ready. You got to be a professional and you got like 7 seconds to position what you're trying to do. I'll give your audience a tip. I learned this from a client. I didn't believe him when he told me this, and I listened to him make these phone calls. He was making pure cold calls, right, from a list that was cold. And he would start off his call saying, hey, Drewbie, this is Walter. I got to warn you. This is a cold call, and I'm not very good at it, so I'm going to need your help. And what he got was either a click, right, because that's always the risk, but he mostly got a laugh, right? And the guy relaxed. The resistances started to be lowered. And then he gave him a great positioning statement. And the guy would usually say, that's bullshit. You are really good at this. But he was in the conversation. He was emotionally involved at that point, right? Because he was still laughing. So that's an extreme, but it's an idea. It's an example of being creative. It's an example of getting to the point and realizing that you need to say something that matters to them, not what matters to you. The whole idea of pitching your features and benefits, nobody cares. Nobody, right? We got to be, what do they care about? What are you going to say that's going to get their attention? So even if that's a text message, you got to be creative with it and bounce ideas off. If you got a sales team, you guys should be sharing ideas, what's working, right? Because you're in competition, but you're also a team, right? And if something's working for one person, maybe it works for you, but you also have to be authentic. You can't pretend to be somebody you're not.
Yeah, the authenticity piece really plays in, especially when you're making cold outreach, because when there's no relationship there, you're really fighting, as you said, in that first, 8 to 12 seconds to genuinely get someone to connect with you on a level that they're willing to invest their most valuable asset, which is their time. Time, energy, and effort, right? Those three all kind of pair together, but time in general is the biggest thing. And what I find so interesting about sales professionals is their unwillingness to try things that are outside the box simply because they don't want to sound silly or look stupid. When at the end of the day, if we think about social media and reality television and all the things that get our attention, like 99% of it is silly stuff, people looking silly or sounding stupid. And then us falling in love with the character once we've seen their vulnerability, once we've seen their being relatable to us. And so, Walter, I appreciate you really taking the time to break that down, because it's so important for people to understand that on your journey, you're going to meet all kinds of different people, and you're going to connect and talk to people of all different sorts. And you've got to be able to adapt to the situation and work within it. And man, I know we could probably sit and nerd out on this topic for many, many hours, because I can tell that you and I are kindred spirits, and there's just the tip of the iceberg of content that I know you can share with us here. So how do we find you, follow you, check out more of your stuff? I think you have like a book that we can learn about. Like, where do we find all that?
So I spend, really the only social media channel I really spend time on is LinkedIn. I think it's professional. It's a place to share ideas. So I'm on LinkedIn, Walter L. Crosby, easy to find. Best way to connect, and you can follow, and it's painless, right? I mean, I'll show up in your scroll from time to time, and my goal is to add value to somebody that looking at it, where they want to look at something else again. And I think the other thing that that's been received well, especially by entrepreneurs, is my book Inside Out: Why Strong EOS Companies Have Weak Sales Teams. Mostly lessons for business owners, but there's some nuggets in there for salespeople. There's some things in there to learn that they can take and use to understand. Because if they start thinking like an entrepreneur, right? Because what they don't realize is that they are an entrepreneur. Because you're running your own little business as a salesperson.
Hey man, I've always said that good quality sales professionals operate as intrapreneurs, in that they have an ownership mindset around themselves, and they take part in belief that their success is a part of what makes the company successful as a whole. And so they have that mentality of, hey, I've got to go above and beyond and do great because I'm an arm of this company. I'm a representative of this. And by doing so, I have ownership in the growth and the results of it. And so,
it's a great message.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. It's one that I had to learn the hard way over the years, because we don't always see it when we're in the mix of the mess. The message isn't a little fuzzy. But this has been fantastic. So thank you again for taking some time out of your busy schedule to be here with us. Really appreciate that.
I appreciate the opportunity. This was fun. And it went by quick. Awesome.
It does, man. And that's why I say we could nerd out about this for many, many hours, because this is the kind of fun conversation we get to have. And so if you guys were listening and enjoyed the show, share it over on social media. Go to LinkedIn, put it out there, tag me, tag Walter L. Crosby. Let the world know you invested your time here. You got some value out of it. Maybe you know somebody who they're really struggling with sales right now. and they didn't before, but they're struggling right now. Maybe they need to get back to some basics. Send them this episode. Say, hey, man, I was listening to this. I was thinking of you. You don't have to tell them they suck or that they're struggling, right? You don't have to call them out. But, like, send them this episode. Let them know that there's some value here for them. And that's what it's all about, is sharing the message, helping people realize that we're not alone in this journey. There's always something to grow from. So if you guys have a sales story. Yeah,
there's one other thing your audience can do is get out there and like, and like on Apple and on whatever where they're receiving this and leave a review. Right, that's really meaningful for a guy like Drewbie to get a positive review and some likes, and so that's worth a couple extra minutes if you like what you're hearing. Keeps it going.
Amen. Thank you for adding that on there. I try not to pander for them because I want them to be authentic, but at the end of the day, I appreciate you going above and beyond to ask for those because they do make a big difference. They do help us get in front of the right people, and ultimately, it's those stories that invite me to find more amazing guests like you. And if you guys are out there listening and maybe you've got a cool story and you want to share it, head over to callthedamnleads.com/podcast. Send us your details, get signed up. We'll bring you on the show. While you're there, grab a hat, wristband, keychain, book, something to support us. Help us keep this thing alive. We'll see you guys next time. Go pick up the phone. Call the damn leads. Take care, y'all.
When the doubt gets loud, but answer that call. Vision ain't real till you grind that speed, so breathing deep. Then call the damn leads. Call the damn leads.